Managing risk. Over the years, there have been an increase in the litigation in sports. Your legal duties as a coach have come as a result of numerous court rulings. Your primary duties is to protect your athletes as well as others. When you take appropriate actions to meet these legal duties, you are managing risks. As a coach, you should focus on the positive side of helping your athletes stay safe. By doing so, you will minimize your risk of litigation. Legal liability refers to the responsibilities and duties between people that are enforceable by the courts. Tort law is associated with determining if a person has failed to conform to a legal duty. As a coach, if you fail to follow through on your duties and these failures results in injury, you can be sued under tort law. The legal term for failing to fulfill these duties is negligence. When coaching, you are negligent if you fail to exercise the skills and knowledge normally possessed by coaches working with those who have a legal duty. Negligence may occur for one of two reasons. It may occur because of the failure to act, or it may occur due to an inappropriate act. When determining negligence, ask yourself these 4 questions. 1. Did you indeed have a legal duty to the injured party in this situation? 2. Did you fail to fulfill this duty? 3. Was there injury to the party to whom you owed the duty? 4. Did your failure to fulfill the duty cause injury? A frequent defense in sport negligent cases is that an injury occurred as the result of the inherent risk in that sport and not that as a failure on the coach's part to fulfill a legal duty. For example, you properly instructed a young boy in diving. The diving board is in excellent condition and the pool is at an adequate depth. While the boy performs a dive, he hits his head on the board, sustaining a serious injury. With no other factors involved, his injury is the result of a risk inherent to diving. Another common defense is that the injured party, often an athlete, may have contributed to the injury, such as by failing to follow instructions. The objective of risk management is to produce the safest environment possible. To do this, follow this 4-step process. Step 1. Identify the risks. These may vary depending upon the sport in which you coach. Step 2. Evaluate the risk. Assign a probability to the likelihood that each risk may lead to an injury and the severity of that injury. Step 3. Select an approach to manage the risk. Eliminate the risk if possible by removing the hazard or by fulfilling your duties competently. Step 4. Implement the approach. This can be done by taking one of 3 approaches. 1. You can avoid the risk by not engaging in the activity. 2. You can accept the risk. You may determine that the benefits of proceeding outweigh the potential costs. 3. You can transfer the risk. For example, rather than driving the athletes yourself, you hire a company to do so. The courts have defined and continue to define your legal duties as a coach. There is actually the coach's 10 legal duties to help guide you as a coach. These include: properly plan the activity, provide proper instruction, warn of inherent risks, provide a safe physical environment, provide adequate and proper equipment, match your athletes appropriately, evaluate athletes for injury or incapacity, supervise the activity closely, provide appropriate emergency assistance, and lastly, protect against physical and psychological harm from others. I will go into further detail in the upcoming slides. Duty 1. Properly plan the activity. In order to fulfill this first duty, teach the skills of the sport in the correct progression. You want to avoid teaching advanced skills too quickly. Develop written practice plans and do not deviate from them without good cause. When developing your practice plans, consider each athlete's developmental level and current physical condition. Be sure to evaluate your athlete's readiness and fitness level at the beginning of the season. Lastly, keep all records of your planning and testing so they can be recalled if there is ever a question regarding how your practice is progressed. Duty 2. Provide proper instruction. You have a duty to teach technical and tactical skills correctly and thoroughly so athletes do not injure others or themselves. Keep current on the instruction standards for your sport and use them. Teach techniques, tactics, and rules in accordance with the methods most commonly used for your sport. For example, you can teach a number of variations for sliding feet first, but if you teach head first sliding and the athlete gets injured, you could be found negligent because head first sliding is not accepted as the correct method. Make your instructions clear, complete, and consistent. Lastly, as a head coach, you must supervise any instruction that is delegated to others, even if it is an assistant coach or even a more skilled athlete. Duty 3, warn of inherent risks. Even though you cannot protect athletes from all risks in sports, you are responsible for providing instructions regarding the safety of the sport. Warn your athletes of the inherent risk of the sports. Your warnings should be thorough, clear, and repeated to ensure that they know, understand, and also appreciate them. There are multiple acceptable methods you can use to warn your athletes. This is just a few of them. You can post signs describing risk and how to perform the sport skills properly. Meet with the athletes to explain the risks. Place descriptions of the risk in player handbooks. Use participation agreements or use videos that illustrate the risks. Duty 4, provide a safe physical environment. To fulfill this duty, note and fix hazardous conditions through regular, thorough inspections of all facilities being used by your program. An easy way of keeping track of these inspections is by developing an inspection checklist for all facilities and equipment used. Change any dangerous conditions that you can. If it cannot be changed, warn your players of the known hazard. Educate your players by giving them precise rules for using the facility. Post these rules and enforce them at all times. Finally, monitor the changing environment and make decisions about continued participation if it becomes hazardous. For example, after a short rain, the softball field may be too muddy to continue to practice safely. Duty 5, provide adequate and proper equipment. To fulfill this duty, you first want to buy the best equipment that you can afford, taking into consideration the age and skill level for whom you coach. Teach your athletes how to fit, use, and inspect their equipment. Encourage them to return equipment that does not fit correctly or needs repair. Next, be sure to inspect equipment regularly. The more demanding the sport is on the equipment, the more frequently it should be inspected. In some sports, players will bring in their own equipment. If that is ever the case, it is still your responsibility to inspect it and ensure that it complies with your safety standards. Be sure to allow only qualified people to install, fit, adjust, and repair equipment. Make sure you warn players of potentially hazardous equipment by providing them both verbal and written instructions. Finally, be aware of changes in equipment by keeping accurate records. Duty 6, match your athletes appropriately. As the coach, be assured to match players according to size, maturity, skill level, experience, gender, those returning from an injury, and those with disability. Be sure to enforce eligibility rules. Modify drills or your practice structure when mismatches in ability cannot be easily corrected. Be especially alert to mismatches between sexes, athletes recovering from injuries, and among athletes with disabilities. This is especially important in a contact sport. Duty 7, evaluate athletes for injury or incapacity. You must ensure that an athlete's health is satisfactory for participation in your sport prior to the start of the season. This is done through the pre-participation physical, which includes a complete health history and physical exam done by a medical professional. During the season, it is your responsibility to determine whether or not an illness or an injury that occurred during practice or competition is sufficiently threatening that participation should be stopped. Also during the season, you must ensure that an injured athlete is ready to return to play. Athletic trainers and various medical staff can help you make this judgment, but ultimately it is your decision. Since most coaching jobs deal with minors, it is best that you recommend that your medical support team follow the American of Pediatric guidelines in determining whether and under what conditions a person can participate. At the college level, follow the NCAA guidelines in seeking to accommodate people with impairments who wish to participate on your team. Lastly, get medical and guardian approval before permitting seriously ill or injured athletes to return to participation. Duty 8, supervise the activity closely. Always provide general supervision for all facilities and playing areas used by your team. You should be immediately accessible to the activity. Provide specific supervision when teaching new skills and the risk of injury increases. Know your sport so you can anticipate potentially dangerous situations and prevent them from occurring. If a situation does occur, react immediately and appropriately. Use posters, notices, and signs to support your supervision. Lastly, do not condone reckless behavior that threatens the safety of any athlete or spectator. Duty 9, provide appropriate emergency assistance. You as the coach have a duty to provide or secure appropriate medical assistance for injured athletes. To fulfill this duty, you should first obtain a consent form from each athlete prior to participation. Protect the injured athlete from further harm. Provide appropriate first aid. Attempt to maintain or restore life by administering CPR when necessary. Comfort and reassure athletes who are injured. Activate your emergency plan, transferring the treatment responsibility to those who are professionally trained to do so. Finally, complete your injury report form as soon as possible with only factual information. Duty 10. Protect against physical and psychological harm from others. You have a legal duty to provide a safe physical environment as well as to protect your athletes from physical and psychological harm done by others. To fulfill this duty, you should develop policies against all forms of discrimination. Be sure to educate all members of your program about these policies. Be observant for signs of inappropriate behaviors and investigate when you believe they may be occurring. When inappropriate behaviors occur, apply appropriate punishments per your policy. Report all incidences to the proper authorities and follow your program's chain of command. Lastly, keep records of all your observations and actions. Other duties to manage to reduce your risk of litigation include keeping accurate records such as player evaluations, practice plans, health history and emergency contacts, consent forms, and injury reports. Provide safe transportation. The best way to transport your athlete in terms of liability is by public carrier. Follow due process and protect your rights of your athletes. Pursue proper training through clinics and professional development. Obtain waivers, but be aware of their limited legal value. In our society today, it is not uncommon for someone to take legal action against another person, especially if an injury has occurred. Insurance is essential in managing risk. Be sure to follow your coaching duties to the best of your ability to reduce your risk of litigation.